Welcome back to In Focus. As we discussed earlier on in the show, inflation just hit a new 40-year high as consumer prices rose to 9.1%. Now, you would think that Joe Biden's response to this would be, at bare minimum, to not ship billions of dollars overseas. You would be wrong. If you're an American, Joe Biden is a thief that keeps on stealing. But if you're someone like Vladimir Zelensky, Joe Biden's the gift that keeps on giving. Biden just pledged another $1.7 billion of aid to Ukraine, this time supposedly to go to Ukraine's healthcare workers. This provided through the United States Agency for International Development, the Treasury Department, and the World Bank. Now, I can't help but think about our healthcare workers here in America, how demoralizing these last few years have been for them throughout COVID-19. Biden didn't even pledge 10% to American healthcare workers than he has to Ukraine in one foul swoop. And that's because he doesn't care about American healthcare workers, because he doesn't care about the American people writ large. That is made clear with something like this. And also with the energy crisis, because both at home and around the globe, energy is in shorter and shorter supply. Here in America, we can thank Biden for that, because while Americans are barely able to afford gas, Biden ships our money to Ukraine, like we just discussed, and ships our energy directly to the Communist Party of China, probably so that his son, Hunter Biden, gets a sweet paycheck from Sinopec. Joining me now to weigh in, representing South Carolina's 3rd Congressional District, Congressman Jeff Duncan. Congressman Duncan, thank you for being with me. So while we're experiencing inflation like we never have at any point in American history, Joe Biden is sending more aid to you. It's like clockwork, Congressman. Inflation gets worse, and right around then, Joe Biden sees it fit to send our inflated money overseas. None of it goes back to the American people. All of it's going to Vladimir Zelensky.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Vladimir Putin and his Russian forces are killing a lot of Ukrainians and decimating cities in their imperialistic takeover that's hurting energy prices. You hit on it earlier that nurses and doctors here at home, they're vilified and demonized during Obamacare and even during the COVID pandemic. They were frontline workers. There should be raises. There should be incentives for hospitals to do that. But at the end of the day, Addison, we're $30 trillion in debt. And our debt is one of the biggest national security issues America faces. And right now we're facing inflation. We're facing high fuel prices. And this is the making of the Biden administration. Joe Biden ended leases from day one on federal lands onshore and offshore for energy production. He canceled leases that were already in existence, so they don't have a 5-year plan for drilling in new federal waters, which they're required to by law. We are blessed in this country with an abundant natural resources, but we're cursed in this country by liberal politicians like President Biden and Democrats here in the House and the Senate that want to thwart Americans' energy renaissance. Under President Trump, we had an American energy renaissance where we were a net exporter of oil. That means we had enough that we could use and then export the leftover. So we need to address pipelines in this country, which are shutting down. The left is using the courts and litigation. We need to drill on federal land, onshore and offshore, produce the resources that we have, both oil and natural gas, to meet our energy needs. There's no reason, other than President Joe Biden, that Americans are paying over $5 a gallon for gasoline.
Well, and now President Biden, while he's shipping all of our oil overseas, he's taking it out of the petroleum reserve. He's saying, okay, maybe gas prices, maybe energy is way too high. Yeah, you think, Joe? He's taking that money or that oil out of the petroleum reserve. Originally, he said it was to provide relief to Americans, and he just went and sent it all overseas. And now he's going overseas. Apparently, he's going to go to Saudi Arabia, that country they used to call a pariah, and get on his hands and knees and beg them for oil, beg them for help to bail us out because our American energy independence is gone thanks to him. Why does Biden not think that our oil is good enough? Why does he want to go to these countries overseas and beg for oil over there when we have the oil in our own reserves? Why will he not take our own oil and use it?
And that is the million-dollar question, so to speak. He's traveling 11,000 miles round trip to go bow down to the Saudis to ask them to produce more oil. So this isn't about climate change or fossil fuels because he wants them to produce more. He ought to fly about 1,000 miles to Port Fourchon, Louisiana, for where all the offshore activity happens. He ought to fly to Midland, Texas, and talk to the oil energy producers, oil and gas producers, and ask what we can do, what the administration can do, what can Congress do to help unleash this American energy renaissance months, once again, to meet our needs here at home versus begging other countries or blaming Vladimir Putin, and then to turn around and release strategic petroleum reserve resources that are there for a time of war or natural disaster. He's already used them to try to increase the supply here at home, which was a temporary fix to lower prices, just a little bump. And then he turns around and sends some of that SPR oil. That's the American resource, by the way. We own it as American taxpayers. Says send it to China. And there's some speculation about ties to that Chinese company that it went to. This is just wrong on so many levels, and I believe it needs a congressional investigation as to why that oil was released and why it was given to China and why it hadn't helped the moms and dads at home that are struggling paying these energy prices, Addison.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because a congressional investigation is what the Power of the Future founder Daniel Turner is raising concerns about. On Monday, he asked President Biden about reportedly selling all those barrels of oil to China. And now energy experts are sounding the alarm. They're raising the red flag, and they're saying there's increasing calls for there to be a congressional investigation, because we know Hunter Biden invested $1.7 billion in Sinopec in 2015 through a private equity firm. We know that to be true. And Biden is now sending that oil to that company, and it's just going to kick back to his son. There's no evidence that he's no longer invested in that company. We haven't heard any of that, and Joe Biden's going to keep dancing around it. He's going to keep dodging it. But in reality, this seems to be exactly what we see it as. This seems to be Joe Biden selling out America to kick a paycheck to his son. And his son has said in text messages, alleged text messages, that he kicks half of his salary over to his dad. So Joe Biden's probably getting a cut of it too.
Yeah, there ought to be a congressional investigation to point to all that. We have Hunter Biden's laptop. We had the release of a lot of videos and text messages and other things there. There ought to be an investigation into Hunter Biden himself, and then I believe they'll reveal all the ties to Chinese and Ukrainian companies and where money has flowed, and a true forensic analysis of all this will show ties to the administration. I can't answer for that because I haven't seen it, but I am calling for an investigation into that. Republicans are going to take control in November. We're going to start in January. Hopefully this is something Kevin McCarthy and the Oversight and Governmental Reforms Committee, Jamie Comer will be the chair of that, Jim Jordan, chair of Judiciary, can really start delving into, put the focus where it needs to be, while we on Energy and Commerce will focus on, I hope, with the very first bill Congress takes up, is an American energy plan to unleash the American energy that we have here, to lessen the price at the pump and get America back on track, because we're a growing nation. We need to get our economy back on track, and energy is the first step to that.
Yeah, we need to take our country back. Congressman Jeff Duncan, thank you so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Addison.